Pruning the Soul. Chapter 1. Hidden Souls. In the heart of Tokyo, where neon bled into ancient shadows, stood a bookstore that defied time. Its weathered facade whispered tales of forgotten lore to hurried passers-by. This was the domain of Mr. Tanaka, a man whose age seemed as fluid as the boundaries between reality and fantasy within his shop. Mr. Tanaka moved through narrow aisles with ghostly grace, his fingers trailing over leather-bound spines. His obsidian eyes held depths that spoke of wisdom earned through countless seasons. "Ah," he murmured, a smile playing at his lips. "It's time." Behind a perpetually dusty shelf, Mr. Tanaka revealed a door that had no right to exist. It opened silently, unveiling a world that stood in stark contrast to the Tokyo beyond. A hidden garden lay before them, a pocket of serenity amidst urban chaos. Here, time moved to the rhythm of falling leaves and unfurling buds. Bonsai trees, each a miniature universe, stood in careful arrangements. "Welcome," Mr. Tanaka said to the empty air, "to the Garden of Souls." As if summoned, 5 individuals found themselves drawn to the bookstore that day, each unaware of the others, each battling inner turmoil. Yuki arrived first, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of an unfulfilling marriage. She paused at the threshold, hand trembling as it reached for the door. Hiro stumbled in next, artist's eyes wild with manic energy. He muttered to himself, fingers twitching as if longing for a brush. Emi's entrance was slow, deliberate. Her eyes, clouded with encroaching dementia, cleared momentarily as she breathed in the musty scent of old books. Takeshi nearly missed the store, gaze fixed on the virtual world projected onto his retinas. Only a glitch in his feed caused him to look up and see the anachronistic shopfront. Sakura came last, her determined stride at odds with the uncertainty in her eyes. Environmental activism pamphlets peeked from her bag, corners worn from nervous fidgeting. One by one, Mr. Tanaka led them through the hidden door. As they stepped into the garden, a collective gasp escaped their lips. The world fell away, replaced by a landscape existing outside of time and space. Yuki found herself drawn to a Japanese white pine, its branches reaching out like grasping fingers. In its twisted form, she saw a reflection of her own constrained existence. Hiro's gaze locked onto a juniper, its foliage a chaotic dance of light and shadow. He swayed slightly, as if hearing a melody only he could perceive. Emi faltered before an ancient Japanese maple. Its gnarled trunk and delicate leaves spoke of resilience and fragility, of memories both cherished and feared. Takeshi blinked rapidly, his augmented reality unable to process the simple beauty of a cherry blossom bonsai. For the first time in years, he found himself fully present in the physical world. Sakura approached an oak, its miniature form a testament to nature's power and delicacy. Her fingers itched to tend to it, to shape its growth in harmony with its essence. Mr. Tanaka watched them all, his expression inscrutable. "The bonsai chooses the soul," he said softly, his words carrying to each of them individually. "And the soul, in turn, shapes the bonsai. Will you learn to listen to its whispers?" 5 pairs of eyes turned to him, filled with confusion, curiosity, and the first sparks of hope. Mr. Tanaka smiled, his face transforming into a map of benevolent mysteries. "Return," he said, "and I will teach you the art of bonsai. But know this, to shape a tree is to shape yourself. Are you prepared for such a journey?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the garden in gold and shadow, 5 souls stood on the precipice of change. The bonsai trees swayed gently in an otherworldly breeze, their branches beckoning with the promise of growth, of pruning, of becoming. In the heart of Tokyo, behind a centuries-old bookstore, a hidden garden held its breath, waiting for the dance of human souls and ancient trees to begin. Chapter 2. First Lessons. The following week, Mr. Tanaka's hidden garden welcomed 5 strangers, each burdened by their own struggles. They gathered around the enigmatic shopkeeper, the air thick with anticipation and unease. "Welcome," Mr. Tanaka said softly. "Today you begin your journey with bonsai. Remember, to shape a tree is to shape yourself." He led them to a table laden with an array of tools, pruning shears, wire, tiny rakes, and delicate brushes. Each item seemed to hold a secret purpose. Bonsai is about harmony, not domination, Mr. Tanaka explained. You guide, you do not force. Yuki's gaze darted to the Japanese white pine that had captivated her before. Its reaching branches mirrored her own longing for freedom. Yuki, Mr. Tanaka said, this white pine will be your companion. Its resilience will teach you much. As Yuki touched a needle, a jolt of recognition passed through her, as if the tree understood her deeply. Hiro, unable to stay still, bounced on his feet. Mr. Tanaka steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. For you, Hiro, the juniper. Its adaptability will challenge and inspire you. Hiro saw in the juniper's untamed growth a reflection of his own chaotic mind. Mr. Tanaka guided Emi to an ancient Japanese maple. This tree holds centuries of wisdom, Emi. It will help you remember. Emi's clouded eyes briefly cleared as she gazed at the maple's delicate leaves, its gnarled trunk holding a lifetime of stories. Takeshi approached his cherry blossom bonsai with detached curiosity. The cherry blossom teaches us the beauty of impermanence, Takeshi. It will show you what your digital world cannot. Lastly, Sakura stood before the oak bonsai, her stance a mix of eagerness and uncertainty. The oak is strength tempered by flexibility, Sakura. It will help you find balance in your passion. Mr. Tanaka demonstrated basic bonsai techniques, each action a meditation. Yuki's pruning was hesitant, each snip accompanied by a wince. Sometimes we must cut away the old to make room for new growth, Mr. Tanaka advised. Hiro attacked his juniper with feverish energy until Mr. Tanaka gently stayed his hand. Listen to the tree. It will tell you where it needs guidance. Emi's gnarled hands moved with surprising grace, each touch unlocking fleeting memories. The tree remembers, Emi. Let it help you remember too. Takeshi struggled to connect with his cherry blossom. Mr. Tanaka guided his hands, helping him feel the life beneath the bark. Feel the rhythm of the living world, Takeshi. It's richer than any virtual reality. Sakura approached her task with intense focus, her movements precise but rigid. The oak bends with the wind, Sakura. Too much rigidity and it will break. As frustration set in, Mr. Tanaka surveyed their work. The bonsai reflects your inner self. Its struggles are your struggles. Its growth is your growth. The 5 students exchanged glances, recognizing their shared struggle. As the sun set, Mr. Tanaka concluded the lesson. Return to your lives, but carry these lessons with you. Observe, reflect, and come back ready to learn more about your trees and yourselves. They left the garden, lost in thought. Mr. Tanaka watched them go, a small smile playing at his lips. The first seeds had been planted. Now it was time to watch them grow. Chapter 3. Budding Connections. Yuki approached her white pine, pruning shears trembling in her grasp. The weight of the tool reminded her of the power she held, not just over the tree, but her own life. Gentle now, Mr. Tanaka murmured nearby. Listen to the tree, it will guide you. She inhaled deeply, the garden's earthy scent grounding her. As she snipped small branches, memories of her marriage surfaced. Each cut felt like severing another tie to her carefully manicured prison of a life. Across the garden, Hiro paced around his juniper, muttering. His eyes darted between branches, overwhelmed by possibilities. One moment he envisioned a masterpiece, the next a hopeless tangle mocking his aspirations. Hiro, Mr. Tanaka called softly. Remember, the tree grows in time as well as space. Shape it gradually. Hiro's shaking hands found the wire. He began wrapping branches, initially too tight, then loosening as he found rhythm. The repetitive motion slowly calmed his racing thoughts. Later, Yuki found herself drawn to Hiro's workspace. She watched him struggle, recognizing her own desperation in his frantic movements. It's beautiful, she said softly, surprising them both. Hiro looked up, startled. You think so? I feel like I'm destroying it. Yuki smiled hesitantly. Sometimes destruction precedes creation. At least that's what I'm learning. Their eyes met, reflecting shared pain and hope. Hiro's manic energy settled. Yuki stood straighter as if shedding an invisible weight. Would you like to see my white pine? Yuki asked impulsively. Hiro nodded, carefully setting down his tools. As they walked, Mr. Tanaka observed, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Yuki's white pine stood before them, branches reaching out like supplicating arms. Hiro tilted his head, studying it. It looks constrained, he said, like it's trying to break free. Yuki's breath caught. Yes, she whispered. That's exactly how it feels. The word it hung between them, encompassing both tree and woman. As sunset painted the garden, Yuki and Hiro sat on a bench, bonsai momentarily forgotten. Words flowed, haltingly at first, then with increasing ease. Yuki spoke of her suffocating marriage, of dreams deferred. Hiro shared his mind's turbulent landscape, its soaring highs and crushing lows. I never wanted to be an office worker, Yuki confessed. I wanted to write, to create worlds. Hiro nodded, understanding. And I can create, but can't control it. Ideas flood in, drowning me, then nothing. Emptiness. As they talked, their bonsai seemed to respond. Yuki's pine stood taller, its needles sharper. Hiro's juniper settled into a more natural shape, its growth finding harmony. Mr. Tanaka approached as daylight faded. Time to close the garden, he said gently. But remember, your work continues even when you're away. The trees grow, as do you. Yuki and Hiro stood, newfound lightness in their movements. Their eyes met once more, a silent understanding passing between them. Same time next week? Hiro asked, smiling tentatively. Yuki nodded, her own smile small but genuine. I'll be here. As they left, stepping back into Tokyo's bustle, both felt a subtle shift. The city seemed less grey, the crowds less overwhelming. In their minds, their bonsai remained, green beacons of hope and possibility. Mr. Tanaka watched them go, nodding. The trees are not the only things growing here, he murmured, eyes twinkling. Some connections, once rooted, can weather any storm. With a final glance at the resilient white pine and juniper, Mr. Tanaka closed the garden door, leaving the trees to grow in the quiet dark of night. Chapter 4. Bridging Realities. Emi's gnarled fingers traced the ancient Japanese maple, each touch a whisper of memory. The tree's twisted trunk pulsed with fragments of the past, just beyond her grasp. Slowly, Emi, Mr. Tanaka's voice drifted over. The tree remembers, even when we forget. She nodded, white hair catching the light. As she pruned a branch, a memory surfaced. Her mother's perfume, laughter in a forgotten house. Tears pricked her eyes. Across the garden, Takeshi fidgeted before his cherry blossom bonsai, fingers twitching for his virtual worlds. He glanced at his smartwatch, counting the minutes until escape. Takeshi, Mr. Tanaka called, help Emi with her maple. 4 hands are often better than 2. Reluctantly, Takeshi joined the elderly woman. Hello, dear. Emi smiled warmly, confusion in her eyes. Have we met? Yes, Emi-san. We've been working on bonsai together for weeks. Oh, of course. Would you mind helping with this branch? My eyes aren't what they used to be. Guiding Emi's hands, Takeshi listened as she spoke of her grandmother's garden and summer evenings filled with stories. The world she described rivaled his games in wonder, yet carried the weight of lived experience. Weeks passed, and an unlikely friendship bloomed. Takeshi found himself eager for their sessions, craving bonsai tools over game controllers. One afternoon, Emi sighed in frustration. I wish I could remember more clearly. So many stories slip away like smoke. Takeshi hesitated, then offered his tablet. We could record your stories, Emi-san. You'll always have them, even on difficult days. Emi's eyes lit up. What a wonderful idea, but I don't know how to use such things. I can teach you, Takeshi said, surprising himself. It's not so different from tending your maple. Each tap shapes the digital world to serve you. As he guided Emi through the basics, Takeshi saw his beloved technology anew, not an escape, but a tool to preserve fragile moments. Emi delighted in learning. Her stories flowed freely, tales of love, loss, war, and peace carefully captured and saved. I was so afraid of forgetting, Emi confessed one day, wiring a delicate branch. But now, with this tree and these recordings, I'm remembering more than ever. Takeshi nodded, understanding dawning. And I was so focused on escaping, I almost missed the amazing stories right here. Mr. Tanaka, overhearing, smiled. The maple and cherry blossom stood side by side, branches reaching towards each other, growing in unexpected ways. As they left the garden, both carried a newfound connection. To their trees, to each other, and to the delicate balance between past, present, and future. Mr. Tanaka watched them go. "The trees teach us," he murmured, "but sometimes we learn the most important lessons from each other." Twilight settled over the garden, the ancient maple and young cherry blossoms silent witnesses to the power of unlikely friendships and shared stories. Chapter 5. Nature's Balance. Sakura's fingers trembled as she unfolded a crumpled protest flyer. "Save our forests," it proclaimed, the bold letters seeming to mock her. The oak bonsai before her stood silent, its miniature branches reaching out like accusatory fingers. "You're being dramatic again," she muttered, reaching for the pruning shears. Her movements were sharp, aggressive, mirroring her inner turmoil. Mr. Tanaka's voice drifted over, soft yet penetrating. "Sakura, remember that the tree is not your enemy. It is your partner in this dance of growth." She paused, shears poised mid-snip, and inhaled deeply. The scent of earth and greenery momentarily drowned out the acrid taste of urban pollution that seemed to cling to her lately. "I know," she sighed. "It's just, everything feels so urgent. The forests are disappearing, the air is toxic, and nobody seems to care. How can I be gentle with this tree when the world is burning around us?" Mr. Tanaka approached, his weathered hands ghosting over the oak's leaves. "Tell me, Sakura, if you were to uproot this tree and plant it in the wild, do you think it would survive?" She frowned. "Probably not. It's adapted to this controlled environment." "Exactly," he nodded. "And yet, is it any less a tree? Any less a part of nature?" Sakura's brow furrowed as she contemplated his words. Her mind drifted to the protest she had led last week, the angry chants, the spray-painted slogans. The satisfaction had been fleeting, quickly replaced by a gnawing emptiness. "I don't understand," she admitted, frustration coloring her voice. Mr. Tanaka smiled. "Nature, Sakura, is not just in the vast forests or the untamed wilderness. It is here in this garden, in the cracks of the sidewalk where weeds push through, in the sparrows that nest in skyscraper eaves, and yes, even in the heart of Tokyo, where humans and nature must find a way to coexist." As his words sank in, Sakura's gaze returned to her oak. She saw now where her harsh pruning had left the tree looking wounded, imbalanced. With a gentler touch, she began to shape the branches, guiding rather than forcing. "The art of bonsai," Mr. Tanaka continued, "is not about dominating nature, but about finding harmony. We guide, we shape, but always with respect for the tree's essential nature. Perhaps there is a lesson here for your activism as well." Sakura's hands stilled as the implication hit her. Her mind raced through her recent actions, the confrontational protests, the inflammatory social media posts, the bridges burned with potential allies. Had she, in her passion to protect nature, lost sight of the very balance she sought to restore? "But how?" she asked softly. "How do I fight for what's right without becoming the very thing I'm fighting against?" Mr. Tanaka's reply was interrupted by the arrival of the other students. Yuki and Hiro entered together, their heads bent in quiet conversation. Emi shuffled in, supported by Takeshi, who was showing her something on his tablet. "Ah, perfect timing," Mr. Tanaka said, eyes twinkling. "I have an announcement. In 1 month's time, we will be participating in the annual bonsai exhibition." A ripple of excitement and anxiety passed through the group. Sakura felt her heart quicken, her competitive nature immediately calculating the work ahead. "This exhibition," Mr. Tanaka continued, "is not merely about displaying perfectly shaped trees. It is an opportunity to show the harmony between human and nature, the balance we strive for in our art and in our lives." His gaze lingered on Sakura as he spoke, and she felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. In the following weeks, Sakura approached her activism with the same care she now applied to her bonsai. She reached out to local businesses, proposing sustainable practices rather than demanding immediate, unrealistic changes. She organized community cleanup events, bringing people together to care for their shared environment. The oak responded to her gentler touch, its growth more balanced, more harmonious. As she worked, Sakura began to see the parallels between her evolving approach to activism and her bonsai practice. Both required patience, understanding, and respect for the intricate balance of complex systems. One afternoon, as the exhibition drew near, Sakura looked up to find Mr. Tanaka observing her. You found it, haven't you? He asked, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Sakura nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. Balance, she said simply. Yes, Mr. Tanaka agreed. In shaping your tree, you've begun to reshape your approach to the world. Remember this lesson, Sakura. True change, like the growth of a tree, comes slowly, steadily, and in harmony with its surroundings. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sakura stood back to admire her oak. Its branches reached out, strong yet flexible, a perfect miniature of the mighty trees she sought to protect. In its carefully nurtured form, she saw a reflection of her own growth, still passionate, still dedicated, but now tempered with wisdom and balance. The annual bonsai exhibition loomed on the horizon, a challenge and an opportunity. Sakura felt a quiet confidence settle over her. Whatever the outcome, she knew that the true transformation had already taken place, not just in her tree, but in herself. As she packed up her tools, Sakura cast one last glance at her oak. We're in this together, she whispered, a promise to the tree and to herself. Growing, changing, finding our balance in this complex world. The garden settled into twilight, the trees standing as silent sentinels, bearing witness to the delicate dance of human and nature, each shaping the other in an endless cycle of growth and transformation. Chapter 6. Inner Turmoil. The garden hummed with tension as the 5 students gathered for their weekly session. The looming annual bonsai exhibition cast long shadows over their work, each pruned branch a testament to their inner struggles. Yuki approached her Japanese white pine, its branches now reaching outward with newfound vitality. She glanced at Hiro, working on his juniper nearby, and felt a flutter in her chest. Hiro, she called softly, could we talk? He looked up, eyes shadowed. Of course, Yuki, what's on your mind? In a secluded corner, Yuki confessed, I'm thinking of leaving Kenji. My marriage is suffocating me. But I'm scared. What if I'm making a mistake? Hiro's face softened. Remember what Mr. Tanaka taught us about pruning. Sometimes we must cut away the old to make room for new growth. Yuki nodded, tears welling. But my career, my family's expectations. Your life is your own bonsai to shape, Hiro said gently. You must tend to its needs, not others' expectations. As Yuki absorbed his words, she noticed Hiro's slumped shoulders. What's wrong? You seem off. He laughed bitterly. The Sato Gallery rejected my latest series, said it lacked coherence and depth. Maybe I'm just fooling myself about being a real artist. Yuki touched his arm. Your art is like your juniper. Wild, unpredictable, but beautiful in its chaos. Don't let one rejection dim your light. Across the garden, Emi sat before her ancient Japanese maple, struggling to focus. Takeshi knelt beside her, tablet ready, but the words wouldn't come. I can't remember, Emi whispered, panicked. Takeshi, the stories are slipping away, and there's one I need to tell before it's gone forever. Takeshi set down the tablet. What kind of story, Emi-san? A secret. One I've carried for so long. But I'm afraid of what it might do to my family if I tell them. Takeshi took her hand. Sometimes the weight of secrets can be more damaging than the truth. As Emi nodded, Takeshi's phone buzzed. His face paled as he read the message. What is it? Emi asked. A job offer, developing VR games for Nexus Corp. The salary is incredible, but their games are designed to be addictive, to keep people hooked, separate from reality. Like you were, Emi said softly. Yes, Takeshi admitted, and now I'd be creating those traps for others. Nearby, Sakura paced around her oak bonsai. Mr. Tanaka approached, concerned. Sakura, what troubles you? Your tree senses your distress. She stopped abruptly. I've been arrested, at the protest last week. They're charging me with vandalism and inciting a riot. If convicted, I could lose everything. My job, my voice in the environmental movement. And what does this teach you, Sakura? She stared at him, incredulous. That the system is rigged? That fighting for what's right comes with a price? Perhaps, Mr. Tanaka nodded. But also that actions have consequences, that even in pursuit of noble goals we must consider the impact of our methods. Sakura's shoulders slumped. She looked at her oak, its branches a testament to the balance she had been striving for. I've lost that balance, haven't I? Balance can always be restored, Mr. Tanaka assured her. but it requires patience, reflection, and often a change in approach. As the session ended, the students gathered their tools, each lost in thought. The annual bonsai exhibition loomed before them, no longer just a showcase of skills, but a crucible for their personal crises. Mr. Tanaka watched them leave, his ancient eyes filled with concern and hope. "The true shaping," he murmured, "happens not to the tree, but to the hand that tends it." The garden settled into twilight, the bonsai trees standing silent sentinel to the human drama unfolding around them. In their twisted trunks and pruned branches lay reflections of 5 souls at a crossroads, each poised on the edge of profound change. As darkness fell, the trees seemed to whisper among themselves, bearing witness to the delicate balance between growth and decay, courage and fear, past and future. The exhibition would come, bringing with it a reckoning for each student. But for now, in the quiet of the garden, only the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze could be heard, a soft lullaby for troubled hearts. Chapter 7. Exhibition Day. The morning of the annual bonsai exhibition arrived, charged with anticipation. Mr. Tanaka's usually tranquil garden buzzed with nervous energy as the 5 students made their final preparations. Yuki stood before her Japanese white pine, its branches reaching outward with newfound vitality. She traced a stubborn branch, recalling hours of careful pruning. In its growth, she saw her own journey, breaking free from constraints. "It's time," she whispered, hand instinctively reaching for her phone, divorce papers ready to be sent. Nearby, Hiro circled his juniper, movements frenetic yet purposeful. Once chaotic, the tree now stood as a testament to embracing one's nature. "We found our balance, old friend," Hiro murmured, smiling. Emi sat before her ancient Japanese maple, Takeshi beside her. Her gnarled hands caressed the leaves, each touch unlocking a memory. "They're coming today, aren't they?" Emi asked, voice trembling. Takeshi nodded, squeezing her hand. "Your family will be here. Are you ready?" Emi steeled herself. "As ready as I'll ever be." Takeshi's resolve strengthened, the job offer from Nexus Corp still unanswered in his phone. Sakura positioned her oak bonsai at the center of an elaborate display, surrounded by photographs and infographics telling a story of urban development and conservation. "Finding harmony doesn't mean giving up the fight," she mused. "It means choosing battles wisely." As visitors flooded the hall, familiar faces appeared. Yuki spotted Kenji, her soon-to-be ex-husband. Hiro's eyes locked onto a Sato Gallery representative. Emi's family approached with mixed emotions. Takeshi noticed his former gaming clan. Sakura recognized local business owners and city council members. Mr. Tanaka moved among his students, a steady presence. "Remember, the tree reflects the soul that tends it. Show them your truth." One by one, they presented their trees. Yuki spoke of growth and liberation, turning to Kenji afterwards, saying simply, "We need to talk." Hiro's presentation was a whirlwind of passion, intriguing the Sato Gallery representative. Emi, supported by Takeshi, shared not just her maple story, but her long-held secret. Her family listened, tears flowing as misunderstandings began to dissolve. Takeshi spoke about balancing virtual and real connections, making eye contact with his old gaming friends. Sakura's presentation bridged the gap between environmentalists and city planners, her oak symbolizing strength tempered by flexibility. As the day progressed, the students supported each other through personal reckonings. Yuki and Kenji had a tearful, understanding conversation. Hiro received an invitation to discuss a potential exhibition. Emi's family surrounded her with love. Takeshi deleted the job offer, mind brimming with ideas for VR in therapy and education. Sakura engaged council members about community-driven environmental initiatives. Mr. Tanaka gathered his students as the exhibition closed. "Today you've shown not just your bonsai's beauty, but your spirit's strength. Remember this moment." They stood together, their bonsai testament to their journeys. The exhibition ended, but their real journey was just beginning. Stepping into the Tokyo twilight, the city seemed different. Neon lights blended with the setting sun, balancing natural and artificial beauty. Mr. Tanaka's bookstore stood in the distance, a reminder of their journey's start and the possibilities ahead. The bonsai trees, carefully transported home, whispered of growth yet to come. For in every tree, and every soul that tends it, lies the endless potential for renewal and transformation. Chapter 8. New growth wind chimes sang in Mr. Tanaka's garden, their melody blending with rustling leaves and Tokyo's distant hum. 6 months after the annual bonsai exhibition, the garden pulsed with an energy born of transformation. Yuki approached her Japanese white pine, its branches now stretching skyward with confidence. She caressed a new shoot, marveling at its vibrancy. "Look at you," she whispered, "growing so boldly." "Much like its caretaker," Mr. Tanaka said, his voice warm with approval. Yuki turned, radiating quiet confidence. "My first book signing is next week," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "I never thought I'd say those words." "The story was always within you," Mr. Tanaka replied. "You simply needed to prune away what was holding it back." Nearby, Hiro tended to his juniper, his movements calm and purposeful. His once chaotic energy now flowed in controlled channels, fueling his art. "The Sato Gallery called," he said. "They want to extend my exhibition. Said they've never seen such raw, honest depictions of mental health." Mr. Tanaka nodded, eyes twinkling. "Your juniper has taught you well. Balance is not the absence of chaos, but the harmony of all elements." Emi sat on a bench, her ancient Japanese maple casting dappled shadows across her peaceful face. Beside her, a young woman listened intently. "And that, my dear granddaughter," Emi said, her voice clear, "is how I met your grandfather during the war. It's not always a happy tale, but it's ours, and I'm glad to finally share it." Her granddaughter wiped away a tear. "Thank you, Obasan, for trusting us with your story." Mr. Tanaka approached, bowing slightly. "Your maple grows more beautiful with each passing season, Emi-san, as do the stories it holds." Across the garden, Takeshi sat before his cherry blossom bonsai, holding a VR headset. "Mr. Tanaka, you have to see this," he said eagerly. "I've created a virtual bonsai garden for therapy sessions. People who can't leave home can tend virtual trees, learning the same lessons we did here." Mr. Tanaka tried the headset, wonder crossing his face. "Remarkable. You've bridged worlds, Takeshi. Ancient art and modern technology in harmony." Sakura's passionate voice carried across the garden as she addressed a group of visitors. "By integrating green spaces into urban planning," she explained, "we create a symbiosis between city and nature. It's about guiding progress towards a sustainable future." As sunset painted the sky, the 5 students gathered around Mr. Tanaka, their bonsai forming a miniature forest of transformation. "Look how far you've come," Mr. Tanaka said proudly. "Each of you has faced challenges, pruned away what no longer served you, and nurtured new growth." Yuki glanced at her white pine. "We've changed so much, yet I feel more like myself than ever." Hiro nodded. "We found our balance not just in our trees but in ourselves, and in each other," Emi added, smiling at the group that had become family. Takeshi looked at his cherry blossom. "We learned to be present, to find meaning in the real world, even as we shape virtual ones." Sakura's eyes shone. "And we learned that true change comes not from force but from understanding and nurturing." Mr. Tanaka regarded each of them, his ancient eyes filled with wisdom and affection. "Remember this moment, for in each of you, as in your trees, lies endless potential for renewal. Life will bring new challenges, new seasons of growth and dormancy, but the roots you've nurtured here will sustain you." As twilight deepened, they stood in comfortable silence. The bonsai, witnesses to their journey, seemed to whisper of growth yet to come. For in every tree and every soul that tends it lies the promise of new beginnings, of balance found and cherished, of lives shaped with the care and artistry of the most beautiful bonsai. As stars appeared in the Tokyo sky, Mr. Tanaka's garden held its breath, ready to welcome the next seekers of wisdom and transformation. The cycle would begin anew, as it always had, in this timeless pocket of green where souls and trees grew in perfect harmony.
Close your eyes, let your mind ignite. The universe's soul is shining bright. Imagination stage a canvas to create. Dream bites with